Hi, you're listening to Burn Beautiful, a podcast for women ready to step into their divine feminine leadership so they can create a life of joy, health, and impact beyond their wildest dreams. Here, you'll learn how to heal stress from the inside out, reclaim your vibrant health, and master your energy so you can lead powerfully without burning out and actually enjoy the moments that matter most in this one beautiful and precious life. I'm Nicole Whitaker, burnout and leadership coach, founder of Lead Up Health, and creator of the H.E.R.S method. Welcome. Hello, welcome back to Burn Beautiful. My name is Nicole Whitaker, founder of Lead Up Health and creator of the H.E.R.S method and host for today. And I'm really excited to zero in today on holistic health, specifically health for women, and especially for women who are 35 plus, balancing parenthood and a high pressure career. I have not met a woman who is not doing her absolute best to be healthy, right? We all want to be healthy, not just to look good and feel young, although there's definitely that, but also because it's deeply important to us to live a long and healthy life, we're thinking about the future, right? About being lively and energetic for even our grandkids. And we all know that to live a full life, to meet our purpose, to have that energy and vitality, it begins with health. I was recently talking to a woman who was stressed with work. And when I asked her what her biggest fear was, if the stress from her career didn't change, she said she was worried about her personal health. She had a young daughter and said she wanted to make it. Those were her words, I want to make it. And that she knew her career was important, but she was burning candles at both ends. And she felt that her family deserved some of her too. And I could hear the pain in her voice. And it really resonated with me because I have felt this before. And she was really hitting on something that we know to be true, which is that most of us are stressed. We know that stress is at the root of most disease and illness. And it is so hard to actually be healthy in today's modern life, especially when we are so busy. There are so many layers to this, but there are two challenges at the heart of it. And one is that our DNA has not evolved as fast as our environment. So all that stress, sitting, processed foods, right? It's really a mismatch to our DNA, and it's making us sick and stressed and disconnected. And also as women, we are up against additional challenges, which we'll get into. But just to share a couple statistics, yes, a woman's lifespan, how long we live, is longer than men's, but our health span, in other words, the years that we are alive and in good health or disease-free or disability-free, is actually much shorter. Women's mean lifespan gap is 14 years, meaning the median woman, if you're looking at the data, the median, women spend about 14 years of the last years of their life sick. That's not something that's most certainly something we all don't want to experience. And meanwhile, for women ages 35 to 55, when perimenopause and then menopause comes in, this is when cardiovascular risk and chronic disease begins to really ramp up. So we know that without our health, we don't really have anything. But the reality is, if we want to be healthy, we can't just do the norm. Because if we just kind of go along with what our environment sets us up to do, that does not lead us toward the health. Look at those statistics. We have to be a bit of a rebel to not go along with what most folks are doing, but to proactively create the health that we want. So today we're going to talk about what's at the root of why it's hard for women to maintain that well-being, what it really means to be healthy. When we say healthy, what are we talking about? There's so much advice out there. And then how to achieve and maintain the kind of health that gives us energy, vitality, and yes, helps us look and feel younger in ways that are actually realistic and doable, no matter how busy you are. So, I first want to share just a bit more about this evolutionary mismatch that I mentioned, and also how this male default lens in healthcare has really made it extra challenging for women. And I want to start here because it's really important to a lot of women have like shame and guilt around, like, oh, I should be healthy. I should, it's another thing we can feel stressed about is our health, and we can get down on ourselves and or try to be perfectionistic about it. And so it's really important to understand that where we are is not our fault. So if you think about it, humans spent over 300,000 years in this hunter-gatherer lifestyle, right? Versus only the past 100 years have really been in this like digital life, right? And so most of our time on this earth as human beings, we had a lot of movement throughout the day. We woke up with the sun, had a ton of sunlight throughout the day, went to bed when it set. We were in tribes and communities, so connection. We had that rhythm of life. All of a sudden, here we are sitting, scrolling, right? And maybe doing a quick little hit run for 20 minutes in the morning, but that's it. Um, Eating processed foods. And so our genes are expecting this natural world that we've experienced, humans have experienced for 300,000 years, but that world doesn't exist anymore. And so a couple more examples, that constant sitting and that isolation, that's leading to poor circulation and inflammation, and then loneliness. We have ultra processed food that really we need because we're so busy, right? But that's leading to inflammation, insulin resistance. We're under such chronic psychological stress, very different from spurts of stress. Back in those hunter-gatherer days, it's consistent. And so that means our cortisol is consistently elevated. It creates burnout, hormone imbalance. We have artificial light at night that is impacting our melatonin suppression. That it disrupts our circadian rhythm, which is incredibly important for sleep, but also hormones. So we're asking our ancient bodies to thrive in a world that is really designed for convenience, not vitality. So the compounding factor here for women is that in many instances, the research around health and medicine has skewed towards including the male body as the default. So for decades, women, especially of childbearing age, were excluded from many clinical trials. And even now, looking at the percentages, many trials include only about like 37% of women. And then the results aren't disaggregated by sex. And so what that means is the female responses are just averaged right in there with the male data. And so what's happening is when we look at health guidance, there's this one size fits all guidance that actually fits men and their linear biology, not women's cyclical physiology, right? We have menstrual phases where our hormones change throughout a month. We go through, childbearing age. Then we go into perimenopause and menopause. And on top of that, midlife women are doing it all, right? We're leading teams, raising families, and navigating perimenopausal hormonal volatility. And we're trying to use this advice built on male data, and it can actually push us further out of alignment. This happened to me. And this creates more stress, worse sleep, metabolism issues, and slower recovery. So there are some examples. My personal example is I was really struggling. I still do struggle with sleep, but I went through a phase of major insomnia. And what I was doing in the morning is I was waking up, chugging some coffee, and then jumping straight into like high intensity interval training or like some intense exercise without eating first. That was the advice, do HIIT. But that was actually one of the factors causing my insomnia. Another example of this is cold plunges. Thank God. I hope that this is going to stick. Recent research has shared that cold plunges are actually too taxing on the female body, whereas we don't reap the same benefits as men. It can actually cause too much stress. And then fasting advice. So taking that last one for an example, fasting has been generalized to everyone and celebrated as a biohack, but in many women, not all women, in many women, especially those who are in high stress or in perimenopause, aggressive fasting can actually spike cortisol. So that's like where you're going to feel anxious, wired, and tired. It actually disrupts cycles or worsens perimenopausal symptoms, and it can disturb sleep and increase cravings and increase belly fat, right? And so this is not to say all fasting is bad or you shouldn't fast ever, but because female stress and hunger hormones like cortisol and leptin interact with estrogen and progesterone differently across the cycle, this is a nuance we've got to take into consideration that a male-centric data did not capture when they were initially sharing the benefits of fasting. So, when data for men and women are, averaged together, it can hide some of these nuances that are incredibly important for women. And this advice can ultimately harm us. So those are, I'd say, two. There are a variety of challenges, our crazy busy lifestyle, this kind of mismatch between our DNA and our current modern life, and then this health advice. There's this plethora of health advice, and a lot of it skewed towards the male body as the default, can really make it challenging for us to have the health that we really want. And so, one thing we definitely don't lack today is information and perspectives on health, right? Especially whatever your social media platform is, whoever you follow, there's a plethora of advice. The challenge is it can feel like this advice is conflicting, that the data are saying different things. And then we're kind of stuck like, what do we do? So we're going to shift now and look at three models, or maybe they're really just perspectives of health. And we're going to distill some of the most important takeaways and kind of reconcile some of those seemingly conflicting pieces of advice. So, the first model or perspective that I want to explore with you today is the blue zones. And the blue zones are basically 5 regions of the world. You may have heard of some of them: Okinawa in Japan, Sardinia in Italy, for example, where people live the longest, healthiest life. So, reacher Dan Buettner has identified from these regions 9 shared lifestyle patterns. He calls it the Power Nine, that explain their exceptional longevity and vitality, these 5 regions where people live the longest. So I'm going to talk about each of the Power Nine here. So the first is to move naturally. So what's really interesting is in these regions, physical activity is just built into their daily lives. They're not waking up early and going to the gym. They're walking, gardening, and just doing manual tasks. The second is purpose, where a clear reason to get up in the morning. And I'm going to do a whole separate episode on this because this is so critical. But what's important to know here is it can be something big, like a mission that you're dedicating your career to, but it can be meaning in small moments, like being there for your grandkids or tending to a garden. The third is that they have consistent downshifting practices throughout the day. It's like regular stress relief rituals like prayer, naps, or community time that's built into the day. So you can kind of think about that stress cup. They're pouring out that stress cup throughout the day. So that state of chronic stress just doesn't exist for them. They abide by what he calls the 80% rule, which is they stop eating when they're about 80% full. Um, plant slant. So in these communities, they are mostly plant-based foods with beans, greens, and very limited meat, which has felt for me in contrast with all this advice about how much protein we need. It's like almost impossible to get it without having more meat, it feels like. Wine at 5. So moderate social enjoyment with alcohol rather than excess or restriction. Again, there's all this research coming out about how terrible any amount of alcohol is for you. Yet in these regions, these blue zones, they drink some wine to socialize. Belonging. Almost everyone in these regions belong to a faith or spiritual community. So that connection to something beyond yourself. Loved ones first, that's number 8. So that family connection and this multi-generational support, right? Where it's not just the nuclear family, it's the extended family as well. And then what he calls right tribe. So strong friendships and that reinforce healthy behaviors. So the core lesson, I think, overall here is that longevity and health arise from daily rhythm and connection, not extremes or isolation. So that's Model A. I want to talk now specifically about modern women's health science, especially for this age of 35 plus, this perimenopausal age. So we have Dr. Stacy Sims, for example, Dr. Mary Claire Haver, Dr. Sarah Gottfried. There are a number of key women who are really focusing on health, specifically for women in this perimenopause to menopause age range. So recent research centered on women's physiology provides these practical evidence-based guidance that differs from that one-size-fits-all advice that might be focused just on male physiology. So here are 5 key takeaways from the research done specifically on women, specifically in that 35 to 55 age range. So the first is that protein matters more for women in this age range. So we need roughly 0.7 to 0.9 grams of protein per pound of body weight per day. That is a crap ton of protein, y'all. That I saw the funniest meme the other day. It was like, protein has been pushed on me as a perimenopausal woman way more than drugs ever were as a kid. I was like, yes, that is hysterical and so true. The second one is prioritize strength training. So because estrogen declines, muscle and bone loss increases. Fun. So to combat that, it is really important to lift 2 times a week at least and lift heavy to support bone density and strength and insulin sensitivity. Number 3 is don't fear healthy fats and fiber. I think this is a really important message for women my age because we grew up in the era of like low fat or 0 fat, all replaced with like chemical stuff, terrible for us. But both of these things regulate hormones and support gut health and reduce inflammation. So we want about 25 to 35 grams of fiber a day. There's things like beans, nuts, chia seeds, flax seeds, but also just whole fruits and veggies. 4, sleep and stress are hormonal levers, meaning we need to not be stressed and we need to sleep. Easier said than done, right? But it's critical, it's essential in terms of balancing our hormones. And then number 5, we want to track cycles or life stage patterns. So understanding where we are in the cycle helps us make better decisions about our training, about what we eat, about how we recover. So the core lesson from this, model here is that women's biology is rhythmic, it's not linear, and strategy should align with hormonal and life stage realities. So we'll take another look at Model C, which is really, I don't know if it's a model, it's more of an umbrella way to look at health, which is just the holistic health model. So this is the model that recognizes that true well-being isn't one-dimensional. It is the integration of four interconnected layers: physical, mental, spiritual, and environmental. And this you'll see overlaps with the blue zone piece, but what this model really emphasizes is when one aspect weakens or is off, the other is going to feel it. When they're aligned, then you're going to feel energetic, you're going to have clarity, you're going to have purpose, and you're going to feel that vitality of health. So the first is the physical dimension. So this is like nourishment, movement, sleep, rest, right? And to highlight how it correlates with other aspects of health, adults who move regularly have 30% lower risk of depression and can sleep better. And it lowers cardiovascular risk, right? So you can see how it dips into those other aspects of health. Looking at the mental and emotional dimension, stress regulation, emotional literacy, for example. Chronic stress can keep cortisol high and drive fatigue, anxiety, insomnia. So you see how that spills into the physical aspect. If we look at the spiritual dimension, this aspect of having a purpose, of having or cultivating gratitude and connection is critical to the other aspects of health. So, for example, a 2022 Harvard study found that people with a strong sense of purpose had a 33% lower risk of early death and better immune function. They got sick less often, right? And then finally, the environmental and social dimension, your surroundings, your community, and nature exposure make up your environment and your social dimension of health. So social isolation increases mortality risk by 26%. On the flip side, daily nature exposure can drop cortisol 15 to 20%, which is, I mean, that's nothing to laugh about, right? It's incredible how these aspects really work together. So the core lesson here is that holistic health is really, it's not about perfection, but it is about coherence. It is about understanding that health goes beyond physical. So, looking at these three models of health, they all, in the end, do point to something similar, which is that health isn't something that you can really perfect or chase. It's something that you need to align with and to listen to yourself in order to achieve. So, the blue zone model shows us that when we live in sync with natural rhythm, the natural rhythms, we're going to thrive. The women's health model reminds us to honor our own biology and our cycles. And the holistic health model reminds us to align at every level of our lives. So, a quick word on health trackers while we're talking about this alignment piece. This is Aura Rings, Apple Watches. I personally use my Fitness Pal, or do on and off. These tools can be so helpful when used consciously, right? They give us visibility into patterns we might not otherwise notice. I know when I was using my Fitness Pal, I was shocked by how many calories I was assuming. I was like, really? Wouldn't have known that without using that for a brief moment just to kind of get that awareness. But I believe that we've become over reliant on data, turning to it as the ultimate truth rather than tuning into our own bodies. And so, what this reminds me of, if y'all have ever read Berenstain Bears as a kid or with your kids, there's this one episode where Mama Bear says like no TV for a week, and Papa Bear is like, how am I going to know what the weather's like? And she opens up a window and she goes and puts her hand out and she goes, try this, like stick your hand outside the window and see what the weather is. And I kind of feel like that's similar to what I'm seeing. I'll ask my husband, how'd you sleep? And he'll look at his data instead of just tell me how he feels. And so I think that data is so important and it's so helpful, but it is designed to support us and our own natural body wisdom, not to replace it. You are the supreme authority of your health. Your body is the most advanced feedback system you will ever have. And so that is how you take supreme authority over your health, is to really listen to and connect to what is right for you and your body. Because ultimately, health is bio-individual, which means what works for you might not work for me. What worked for you at one age may or may not work for you at another age. Um, so let's jump into then what are some simple ways to reclaim your health so you can have that vital energy you desire. You have health both now and also well into old age. Um, the first that I'd like to offer is to reclaim your body's rhythm. And so your body is full of wisdom. You just need to tune into it. So this is simply a matter of being still and noticing, your daily, your monthly, and even your seasonal energy cycles. Nature teaches us this. Just look at the evolution of a tree and what it goes through cyclically, depending on the season. And we're part of nature as well. Right now it is fall. I know I'm most certainly craving some slower mornings. I'm turning inward a little bit more. I'm a little bit more reflective. And, if whatever you're feeling at the moment, the encouragement is to follow your intuition. And you can build small anchors throughout your day, right? Not rules, just simple rhythms that support you, such as getting morning light within 30 minutes of waking. This is going to reset your cortisol and circadian rhythm. Um, Keep that consistent sleep wake window as much as you can. Take short movement or breathing breaks throughout your day, and then come up with the end of the day wind down that signals rest. You really don't need a perfect routine here. You just want one that really fits with your life. And so I'm going to share my morning routine just as an example, but it wasn't always this way. It most certainly wasn't always this long when I had, when I wasn't self-employed and when I wasn't, and when my kids were super young. But right now, I wake up. Um, I tend to wake up earlier than my kids, and I lie in bed. And to myself, I simply think, thank you for today. Um, Please, equip me with whatever I need to meet the challenges for today, to meet my goal. I just lie in bed and think that to myself. Then I get up, usually with my oldest daughter, who loves to wake up super early, and I drink a glass of water and I step outside and I get that sunlight for 5 minutes. I'm going to try and keep doing it through the winter. I don't like to be cold, but if not, I have a sunlight lamp because sleep has been a challenge for me, and that helps to reset my rhythm. And then I drink a protein drink, and then I do have some coffee. And then by that time, my husband wakes up and we trade off for the morning. And that's when I go up and exercise. 20 to 30 minutes in the morning during the weekdays. I don't do it on the weekend because that's just, I choose to make that family time. So that's what works for me. Again, you don't need a perfect routine. You don't need to do everything, but if you want to introduce one small ritual that might fit your life right now to help set that rhythm. The second offering I'll give you is to redefine nourishment. So reframe this whole desire to eat, quote unquote, right. For most of us, food has been entangled with like guilt or rules or like I have to do this perfectly. For sure, this was true for me, right? It's like I used to have my green smoothie, or oh my gosh, I wasn't following the health rules that I put in place for myself. But really, food is a way to nourish us. And so when we go downstairs for breakfast, instead of saying like, what should I eat? What do I need to eat? We can say, how can I nourish my body right now? Because what you eat literally becomes you, right? It becomes your cells, your hormones, your energy, your hair, your nails, And so, I mean, food literally even influences your genes and your mood. And so when you reframe and think of like, oh, I get to nourish my body, you're going to end up making shifts. You're going to end up choosing real foods over processed ones. You're going to end up slowing down when you eat because you're going to be thinking about that nourishment. Um, don't ignore the advice, right? We know that we do know that the science says that we need protein. So get your protein in. This can look like a protein powder. This can look like 3 eggs. And then don't forget the fiber with that. My routine is 3 eggs, um, I kraut, microgreens, and half an avocado for that fiber. And just remember that nourishment isn't only food, right? We know from looking at holistic health and from those blueprint zones that it's also laughter, friendship, it's rest. Those things are nourishing to you just how food is nourishing to you. The third is we really want to de-stress, y'all. De-stress and stick with the basics. It is eat, move, sleep, and breathe. The more complicated wellness gets, the more we want to just return to the basics. And as we're entering this holiday season, when things become chaotic, it really is just focusing on the basics. So when you eat, you want to eat mostly real foods, colorful foods, right? You want to eat it regularly enough so your blood sugar is not like rising and crashing to keep it stable. You want to move your body, not just once at the beginning of the day for exercise, but get up. I read something about doing squats, like I forget, like 4 squats is more powerful than going on a 10-minute walk after a meal or something like that. Don't quote me on that. But the point is you could like hop up in between meetings and like do some quick movement, right? To get that piece in. Sleep, you want to sleep 7, 8 hours. You can do this with a consistent bedtime, dark room, no phone. And then we'll talk about hormones in a moment because this can get real hairy when you enter perimenopause. And you want to breathe, right? You want to take mini pauses. You can do 3 slow exhales before a meeting. You can, y'all, if you could just get outside and stand facing the sun for 30 seconds. I mean, it will change your day and your mood in 30 seconds before that meeting. So stress isn't just mental, right? It is biological. So each downshift is going to help to lower cortisol, calm inflammation, and restore that balance. So these micro movements of recovery are going to help you shift from that potentially survival mode into more sustainable energy. And then finally, I just want to give a word on hormone health. If you are 35 or older, this is super important. Um, Maybe your sleep falls off, your mood shifts more, your energy dips, or your body feels different. If that's happening to you, this is not a lack of discipline. It could very well be that your hormones are beginning to change. And so if something is feeling off, don't ignore it. Don't push through it. You want to check in with your OBGYN or a functional medicine provider or a hormone practitioner, someone who can get your hormones tested and help you balancing this out. This is so, so critical to your mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual health. And so in closing, just a quick recap. Our ancient biology is struggling to keep up with this modern world that moves so fast. Much of women's health advice has been based on data from men, and your body deserves its own blueprint. We can learn from models of health like blue zones, health science that's specific to women, and holistic models that really point towards rhythm, nourishment, connection, and really just being in tune with your own body and your specific health needs, which are unique to you. Um, And let's stick with the simple foundations: eating, moving, sleeping, and restoring your nervous system. And as much as you can, follow the rhythm of nature, follow the rhythm of your body. So, in reflection, consider where in your life you have been pushing against your body's wisdom. What small rhythm or ritual could you bring back today? And what does your body most need right now? Rest, nourishment, connection, stillness, and a final reminder that your body is incredibly wise. It is your ultimate source of truth when it comes to what is right for you. And listening to it is self-leadership and self-sovereignty. And if you're ready to go deeper, to rebuild more energy or health and purpose from the inside out, you can book a free leadership breakthrough call with me at www.leaduphealth.com. It has been such a joy being with you here today. Keep honoring your rhythm, leading from wholeness, and as always, burn beautiful, loves. Thank you for spending this time with me. If this episode sparked something in you, subscribe, and I'd be so grateful if you take a moment to rate and review the show. It is the most powerful way to help other women find it. And if you know someone who is struggling or on the edge of burnout or simply wants to lead from wholeness, send this their way. Let's grow this movement together. To get exclusive insights, tools, and behind-the-scenes support, join the H.E.R.S Insider List at www.leaduphealth.com. And if you're ready to explore working together, whether through coaching or consulting, you can book a free consultation right from the site. Until next time, burn beautiful, loves.